it's certainly not just the expansion of the standard Western multi-party democracy. A tension which is immanent to the very idea of parliamentary democracy is gaining visibility today. Democracy means two things: the power of the people, in the sense that the substantial will of the majority should express itself, and the trust in electoral mechanism. Democracy means, yes, there may be manipulations and so on, but once the votes are counted, all sides accept the result. Of course, we leftists and even some rightists claim this parliamentary mechanism is not neutral. And this is true. Because this is the crazy thing today. It's no longer that less developed countries, so-called third world countries, are the countries where democracy doesn't function and then we look to the West. No, the standard democracy, multi-party representative democracy, is in crisis in the so-called developed West itself. If you follow a little bit the news, you may have noticed some very strange phenomena. Like in 2005, 17 years ago, I was in United Kingdom, and the Labour Party with Tony Blair won the election. But 2 weeks before the election, there was a big opinion poll: who is the most hated person in the United Kingdom? The same person, Tony Blair. And this is a very tragic phenomenon which should worry us. We have a certain dissatisfaction, protest, which somehow escapes the regular voting mechanism of multi-party democracy. You have a dissatisfaction which cannot be expressed through the regular parliamentary democratic channels. There is another example of this. Do you remember in France, I think it was some 3 years ago or when, these protests of so-called yellow vests? It's not protests of people who are deprived of democracy. It's a much more mysterious protest. It's a protest of people who are dissatisfied precisely by parliamentary democracy with all its freedoms and so on and so on. And what was so tragic was that, okay, then Macron, president, the government, tried to play a polite role. He said, okay, come to me, we will debate. And it was a terrible experience. They talked different languages in some sense. It became clear that we have here a gap, that what people who were protesting demanded simply in some sense couldn't be translated into the usual language of parliamentary manipulations and so on and so on. It was, if you remember it, the same in Spain, some 10, even more, I think, years ago. It was the same popular explosion with Podemos, the movement. Hundreds of thousands of people on the streets and so on. And then, what happened then? Then, finally, Podemos constituted itself as a party, and now it's part of a government. It's just an ordinary, let's call it, social democratic political party, no big difference from socialists. Where did that energy go? What is the problem here? The crisis of liberal democracy lasts for decades. the COVID epidemic only made it explode beyond a certain level. The basic premise of a functioning democracy is today more and more undermined, namely the trust on which democracy relies. This trust was best expressed by Abraham Lincoln's famous saying, "You can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people you can fool all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." But I think the latest experiences tell us that things are even a little bit darker. Like, you can fool most of the people most of the time, definitely. It's in very rare moments that collectively people can live in truth. And I will return to this later. Another thing you must abandon here is the too simple paranoiac theory that there are evil manipulators who manipulate, who make the people blind. No, manipulators who fool the people are always themselves fooled. For example, in the United States, you shouldn't think that Donald Trump knew exactly what was going on and lied to the people. No, he was also definitely lying to himself. So here comes my my pessimist, if you want, pessimistic insight. What really did strike me is that leftists advocate all the time some kind of immediate, direct democracy where the people is given, people are given voice directly. But what shocked me is that I remember from Donald Trump's inauguration speech in 2017, how he used the same term. Let me remind you, I quote Donald Trump. Today's ceremony has a very special meaning because today we are not only transferring power from one administration to another, from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and we are giving it back to you, the people. Till now, elites were ruling, but this all changes now. Starting right here and now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. It belongs to everyone gathered here today and everyone watching all across America. This is your day. So isn't a paradox that Donald Trump, in his populism, uses the terminology which is usually the terminology of the radical leftist critics? And let me go even to the end here. We all watched in the beginning of January of this year how the mob, the crowd of Trump protesters, broke into the Capitol. And what made me sad is the reaction of my leftist friends who said, this is a wonderful thing happening. People directly breaking into the seat of power, trying to take over. Just it's that they are not the right people. We should be doing this, not they. I don't accept this. I think that with a few big, courageous exceptions, like Euchre, maybe some others up to a point in Bolivia and so on, today, these people, the people into whom democracy tells us to trust, these people is more and more divided, no longer exists. Now I will do, I think, something strange. It may sound totalitarian, but it's meant in a radically democratic way. I think that we are all so caught in our divisions. The whole world is today in some kind of a ideological civil war, that the people, the task of a revolution is not only to represent adequately people, but in the same way to make people, if you want to construct the people, to make people aware of what they want. People don't simply know, I want this, and then you go into politics like on a market, oh, this politician is telling what I want, that other is telling even better, I will vote for him, and so on and so on. No, people need leaders, or at least a leading organization. Because I will now do something very strange. I will quote, the old car maker from United States who invented serially produced car making, Henry Ford. He said that he didn't follow what people wanted. He said that if he were to ask people, what do you want? People would have answered, I want a better and stronger horse to pull our carriage. And he didn't give them a better, stronger horse. He gave them cars. And something like this is happening today. We shouldn't just ask for a better horse, for better functioning of what is here. We should ask for something that was more than 100 years ago, like a horse. We should demand or try to invent through leaders a better help. And to avoid a misunderstanding, a leader for me is not the one who tells you what you want, who gives you orders and so on. A true, don't mystify the people. They are confused today. They are all caught in ideology, in their egotist problems, dreams. Ideology is, we can talk more about this later. I just want to tell you now that ideology is not some abstract system of values and so on. Ideology is inscribed into your everyday experiences. Like for me, the best example of ideology is everyday racism. It's usually not even put in ideological terms. When you walk in the street and see a foreigner from some so-called third world country, and you are disturbed by him or her, you say yourself, okay, I am not a racist, but I don't want to be too close to him, and so on and so on. That's everyday life ideology. How we eat, how we marry, how we make love, and so on. All this is ideology. And the message of a good leader is not, no, I know better than you what you want, but it's, I give you hope. It's like Bernie Sanders just sitting there. I give you hope, you can move beyond this, out of this. And another thing for what I think a good leader is needed is to make tough decisions. Because as much as I like these emphatic moments of popular unity, 500,000 of people demonstrating and so on, I more and more think that the system can and was always able, the system of power, to accommodate with these outbursts. You wait a little bit in the shadows, then the enthusiasm fades away and things return to the old order. No, the problem is to translate this popular discontent into a new form of political organization. You have to make tough decisions. In this sense, only in this sense, because this is a very dangerous metaphor. In this sense, politics is like medicine, healthcare. You have to make tough decisions, or military command. You have to say, sorry, now we have to risk that thousands will die in that unit. Or we cannot take care of all the patients, some will die, who will die, and so on. These are horrible decisions. The best definition of leader, because I am an ordinary low guy, I also watch ordinary TV series, I warn you. I watched that American medical doctor series, New Amsterdam, where an administrator tells an old doctor, leaders make choices that keep them awake at night. If you sleep well, you are not one of them. You are not a leader. This is, for me, a good leader. So it's not simply direct people's democracy. You need inspirational figures. We need force to organize it, because again, it's not just political alienation and so on. It's also the other side, which is in crisis today. We no longer can simply say the people. Which people? People are divided and so on. Well, I will now quote from somebody with whom I absolutely don't agree, but here he made a good point. The bestseller author Yuval Harari. He wrote that, I quote, people feel bound by democratic elections only when they share a basic bond with most other voters. If the experience of other voters is alien to me, and if I believe they don't understand my feelings and don't care about my vital interests, then even if I am outvoted by 100 to 1, I have absolutely no reason to accept the verdict. End of quote. So this, I think, is happening today. I think this is maybe the root, one of the roots of the crisis of liberal democracy. People like to say democracy implies differences and so on. Yes, but differences against the background of a basic pact. Like with you, the Kurds. You cannot say the solution is big democratic elections in all of Syria and Turkey. Yes, it would be nice, but I can well imagine, I don't know, this is pure hypothesis, in Turkey, Erdogan mobilizing the crowd against you and presenting you as intruders and so on and so on. Again, elections work when a certain solidarity is already here. We may oppose each other, but we accept basic rules. This is, I think, what is happening with the crisis of democracy today. In United States, we have now an almost a war, an ideological civil war. We have half of the people, maybe a little bit more, who still remain liberal Democrats with all the limitations. And then we have almost half of the people, Trump followers, populists. And what is so interesting is that how this opposition, and they don't speak the same language. The country is falling apart. The crisis in the United States, you cannot resolve it by simple big democratic elections. You get two countries. The situation is totally mystified because Trump populists, manipulated by many billionaires, nonetheless act as representatives of the people, while Democrats, who also want to represent minorities and so on, also often play a very strange game with ordinary people and so on.